The air in the church was thick with the scent of lilies and betrayal, a bitter perfume on what should have been the happiest day of my life. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage, each beat echoing the silent scream inside me. Across the aisle, my younger sister, Lily, stood in a shimmering white gown, a perfect mirror of my own, her eyes fixed on my groom. A shiver, colder than any winter wind, traced its way down my spine as I watched her delicate hand brush against his arm, a gesture too intimate, too possessive for a wedding guest. The diamond on my left hand suddenly felt heavy, a beautiful lie on a finger now trembling with disbelief and a growing, suffocating dread. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a battlefield where my dreams were being slaughtered right before my very eyes. The heavy oak doors of St. Michael's swung open with a soft, reverent creak, a sound that in any other moment would have filled me with pure, unadulterated joy. But today, it felt like the opening of a cage, letting out a beast of dread I had tried so hard to keep contained. My father, his eyes glistening with happy tears, offered me his arm, his grip steady and reassuring. He smelled of his favorite aftershave and something else, something comforting and familiar like freshly mown grass after a summer rain. My own white dress, a masterpiece of lace and silk that I had dreamed of since I was a little girl, felt suddenly suffocating. Each delicate stitch, each pearl sewn with such care, now seemed to press against my skin, cold and heavy. My bouquet, a delicate cascade of white roses and baby's breath, trembled slightly in my gloved hands. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to calm the frantic fluttering in my chest. The organist, a kindly older woman named Mrs. Peterson who had played at every family event for 30 years, began the familiar, majestic strains of the wedding march. The notes swelled, filling the cavernous space, washing over the hushed whispers of the 200 guests. I looked up down the long, red-carpeted aisle, past the smiling faces of our loved ones, past the rows of carefully arranged flowers, all leading to one point. Mark. My Mark, stood at the altar, looking impossibly handsome in his charcoal suit, his broad shoulders squared, his usually easy smile a little tight around the edges. His dark eyes, which could always make me feel like the only woman in the world, were scanning the entrance, searching for me. A warmth, brief and fleeting, flickered in my heart, a desperate attempt to push back the icy tendrils of doubt that had been creeping in for weeks. He saw me then, and his eyes, for just a second, lit up with that familiar love, that spark that had drawn me to him 3 years ago. My lips curved into a small, fragile smile. Maybe, just maybe, I was imagining things. Maybe the wedding jitters had finally taken over. But then my gaze drifted slightly to his left, to the bridal party, and the warmth in my chest evaporated, replaced by an even colder dread. There she was, Lily, my younger sister, my only sibling, standing proudly as my maid of honor. She wasn't just standing proudly, she was glowing, and she was wearing white. Not ivory, not cream, not champagne. Pure, stark, shimmering white, exactly the same shade as my own gown. It wasn't the flowing, ethereal bridal white, but a sleek, form-fitting gown that screamed, "Look at me." Its intricate lace overlay and delicate beading mirroring the expensive details of my own dress almost too perfectly. A gasp, barely audible, escaped my lips. My father squeezed my arm, a silent question in his eyes. I forced a smile, a mask to hide the shock and outrage that was now bubbling fiercely within me. I had specifically asked all my bridesmaids, including Lily, to wear a soft lavender. We had picked out the fabric together 2 months ago, laughing over swatch samples at the boutique. "It's so elegant, so unique," I had told her then. She had agreed, her smile wide and seemingly genuine. But now she stood there, a vision in white, a rival bride, a cruel parody of me. My eyes, fixed on her, narrowed imperceptibly. Her hair, usually a wild cascade of dark curls, was meticulously styled in an elegant updo, adorned with tiny, shimmering pearl pins. Her makeup was flawless, enhancing her already striking features, making her seem almost ethereal. And her smile was not for me, her sister, the bride. It was directed squarely at Mark, a slow, alluring curve of her lips that sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. As I took my first tentative steps down the aisle, the world seemed to slow down, each beat of the organ a heavy, deliberate thud. I could feel the eyes of the guests on me, but my focus remained locked on Lily. She caught my gaze then, and her smile faltered for the barest fraction of a second, replaced by a quick, almost imperceptible smirk, a glint of triumph in her usually innocent-looking eyes. My blood ran cold. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. This was Lily. Memories, sharp and painful, flooded my mind, each one a testament to Lily's lifelong obsession with being the center of attention, with taking what was mine. When I was 7 years old and she was 5, I had won first place in the school art competition. My painting, a colorful depiction of our family home, hung proudly on the fridge. The next day, I found it torn in 2 pieces, hidden under her bed. She had tearfully denied it, of course, and our parents, always quick to forgive their youngest, had dismissed it as a childhood accident. When I was 16 and she was 14, I had finally been asked to the prom by David Miller, the cute football captain I had crushed on for 2 years. I spent weeks picking out the perfect dress, a shimmering blue gown that made me feel like a princess. The night of the prom, David canceled 2 hours before, suddenly sick. The next day I saw photos on social media, David and Lily laughing, holding hands at a rival school's dance, Lily in a stunning red dress, her arm linked through his. She had said, "Oh, he just asked me to go as a friend after you canceled. I didn't want to waste my dress." She had twisted the truth so easily, so convincingly, that I had almost believed her. My heart had shattered into a million tiny pieces that day, and a part of me never quite healed. These thoughts, these raw wounds, flashed through my mind in the agonizingly slow walk towards the altar. Each step was a battle against the urge to turn and run, to scream, to confront her right there in front of everyone. But no, this was my day. My wedding. I wouldn't let her ruin it. Not yet, I would get through this. As I finally reached the altar, my father gently placed my hand in Mark's. Mark's hand felt warm, but his gaze was momentarily drawn to Lily, who was adjusting a stray curl near his ear, her fingers lingering for a fraction of a second too long. My breath hitched. He wasn't even looking at me fully, he was allowing this. The truth of it hit me with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't just oblivious, he was permitting her behavior. The ceremony began. The efficient Father Michael, a kind, elderly man with a gentle voice, began the readings. His words, meant to be comforting and sacred, floated past me unheard, muffled by the roaring in my ears. All I could focus on was Lily, standing a mere 3 feet away, her body angled subtly towards Mark. Every few minutes she would lean in, whispering something to him, a secret shared between them. Mark would offer a small, almost imperceptible smile in return, a nod of his head. My blood boiled. Was he really falling for her? Was all of this, our 3 years together, our dreams of a future, just a flimsy facade she could easily shatter with a bat of her eyelashes and a white dress? I tried to meet Mark's eyes, to send a silent plea, a warning, anything to snap him out of whatever trance she had cast him under. But he mostly avoided my gaze, his focus shifting between Father Michael and, disturbingly often, Lily. The priest's words about eternal love and unwavering commitment felt like a cruel joke, echoing hollowly in the vast church. My mind raced, reeling from the raw pain of the present and the bitter memories of the past. Lily had always been the golden child, the prettier, more charming, more vivacious one. While I was quiet and studious, she was outgoing and popular. While I worried about grades and responsibilities, she breezed through life, always finding a way to get what she wanted, often at my expense. Our parents, blinded by her dazzling smile and seemingly innocent demeanor, rarely saw her manipulative streak. "Oh, Lily just loves attention," my mother would often say, dismissively. "She's just a free spirit." But I knew better. I knew the calculated malice that lay beneath her saccharine charm. Over the past few months, leading up to the wedding, her behavior had become increasingly unsettling. She had insisted on helping with every single detail, often overriding my choices. "No, sis, the white lilies look so much more classic than those pink peonies," she had said, even though pink peonies were my absolute favorite. She had taken over the wedding planning spreadsheet, accidentally deleting several key vendor contacts, causing me endless stress. She had even helped me pick out my wedding gown, making snide remarks about certain styles, gently nudging me towards a dress that, while beautiful, felt just a little less me than the one I truly loved. "You want to look sophisticated, not too flashy," she had purred, her eyes glinting. And then there was Mark. She had been overtly flirty with him from the moment they met 3 years ago at my 25th birthday party. I remembered watching her, then 23, laugh a little too loudly at his jokes, touch his arm a little too often. She's just being friendly, Mark had assured me then, his arm around my waist, his kiss chasing away my unease. I had tried to believe him. I had wanted to believe him. But as the wedding planning progressed, Lily's presence had become a constant, suffocating cloud. She was always at our apartment, helping with invitations, sampling wedding cake flavors, always there when Mark was home. She would wear tiny shorts and low-cut tops, lounging provocatively on our sofa, pretending to be engrossed in her phone, but her eyes constantly darting towards Mark. I confronted her once, gently. "Lily, could you maybe wear something a little less? Revealing when you're at our place, it's just, Mark and I need our space." Her eyes had welled up instantly. "Oh, I'm so sorry, sis. I didn't even think. I just came from the gym. I guess I'm just so comfortable around you guys, it feels like home." Mark, walking in at that exact moment, had shot me a disapproving look. "She's just being herself, honey. Don't make her feel unwelcome." My heart had sunk. He was defending her. A memory from just 2 weeks before the wedding flashed vividly. We were at the final cake tasting. Mark, Lily, and I, the baker, had laid out 5 different exquisite flavors. Lily had taken a forkful of the chocolate truffle cake, moaned with delight, and then, without thinking, held the fork to Mark's lips. "Taste this, Mark, it's divine." Mark had hesitated for a split second, then opened his mouth, allowing her to feed him. Their eyes had met for a lingering moment, a shared intimacy that felt like a punch to my stomach. I remember feeling frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, the sweetness of the cake turning to ash in my mouth. "Shouldn't you feed your fiancé?" the baker had asked, an awkward cough escaping her lips. Lily had giggled. "Oh, we're practically family already." Mark had flushed, finally turning his attention to me, an apologetic look on his face. "Sorry, honey, just got carried away." But the damage was done. Seed of doubt, planted so long ago, had begun to sprout thorny branches, coiling around my heart. The officiant's voice brought me back to the present. "Do you, Mark, take Amelia to be your lawfully wedded wife?" My breath caught in my throat. This was it, the moment of truth. I held my breath, my eyes fixed on Mark, pleading with him silently to erase all my fears. Mark paused, a long, agonizing pause. My stomach churned. Was he hesitating? Was he going to say no? My vision blurred with unshed tears. Lily, out of the corner of my eye, seemed to hold her breath too, a smug little smile playing on her lips. Then Mark cleared his throat. "I do," he said, his voice a little hoarse but firm. A wave of relief, so potent it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. I let out a silent sigh. He said it. He chose me. Maybe I was truly being paranoid. Maybe this was just my insecurity, my past with Lily, playing tricks on my mind. I tried to push away the image of Lily in her white dress, her eyes fixed on him. "And do you, Amelia, take Mark to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Father Michael asked, his gaze kind and reassuring. I looked at Mark, truly looked at him, searching for any sign of deception, any hint that he wasn't truly mine. His eyes, now focused solely on me, held a strange intensity, an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. But he was here. He said, "I do." "I do," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, hope battling stubbornly with dread. Then came the rings. Our 3-year-old nephew, little Leo, was supposed to carry them on a velvet cushion. He toddled adorably down the aisle, his tiny suit a miniature version of Mark's. He reached the altar, beamed proudly, and handed the cushion to Mark. Mark took my hand, his touch sending a familiar warmth through me. He slid the beautiful gold band onto my finger, his eyes meeting mine. "With this ring I thee wed," he murmured, his voice tender. For a fleeting second, all my doubts vanished. This was real. This was love. Then it was my turn. I took Mark's hand, my fingers tracing the strong lines of his palm. I reached for his ring, lying there on the cushion. But Lily, moving with lightning speed, intercepted my hand, grabbing the ring herself. "Oh, let me help, sis. It's tradition for the maid of honor to assist." She chirped, her voice sickeningly sweet, a high-pitched ring in the otherwise hushed church. She took the ring, then rather than placing it in my hand, she held it out to Mark, her fingers brushing his, her gaze locked with his. It was a gesture so brazen, so openly flirtatious, that a collective gasp rippled through the front rows. My face burned. I felt a hot flush of shame and anger spread through me. This wasn't just an accident. This was an open challenge. She was doing it right here, right now, in front of God and everyone. My eyes flashed to Mark, begging him to shut her down, to reject her overture. But Mark, to my horror, simply took the ring from her, his hand briefly covering hers, his gaze still on her. He didn't say a word, he didn't even look at me. He just took the ring, then, almost mechanically, turned to me and offered his hand. My heart shattered. It wasn't just Lily. It was him too. He was letting her. He was responding to her. The implication that he was falling for it now felt horrifyingly real. All the little doubts, all the uneasy feelings I had dismissed as pre-wedding nerves, crashed down on me with the weight of a collapsing building. I stared at his outstretched hand, the beautiful gold band now feeling like a chain. My eyes blurred with hot tears that threatened to spill over. I saw his lips moving. "Amelia," he whispered, a question in his voice. The world seemed to tilt. The scent of lilies became cloying, suffocating. The organ music turned into a discordant dirge. I looked at Lily, who was now smiling broadly, a triumphant, almost predatory gleam in her eyes. Her lips silently mouthed two words at me. "He's mine." That was it. That was the breaking point. The years of quiet suffering, the constant underestimation, the humiliation, the feeling of being cast aside, it all coalesced into a molten core of rage within me. My hands clenched, trembling not with fear but with a fierce, burning anger. I had always been the quiet one, the one who tried to keep the peace, the one who let Lily walk all over her. But not today, not on my wedding day. This was my line in the sand. "No," I heard myself say, my voice surprisingly steady, though it felt like a stranger's. "No, I can't." A stunned silence fell over the church, so profound that you could hear a pin drop. Father Michael's kind face twisted in confusion. My parents in the front pew gasped, their eyes wide with shock. Lily's triumphant smile vanished, replaced by a look of bewildered annoyance. Mark stared at me, his eyes now wide with genuine surprise, perhaps even a flicker of fear. "Amelia, what are you talking about?" he asked, his voice low, urgent. I pulled my hand away from his, the beautiful diamond on my finger suddenly feeling like a branding iron. I took a deep breath, and then another, trying to steady myself. "I can't," I repeated, louder this time, my voice trembling but gaining strength. "I can't marry you, Mark." Gasps erupted from the pews. My mother started to weep softly. My father stood up, a look of utter bewilderment on his face. Lily's face contorted into a mask of pure indignation. "Amelia, what are you doing? You're ruining everything," she shrieked, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. I turned to her, my eyes blazing. "You have no right to speak, Lily," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "This isn't about you. For once, this isn't about you." But I was wrong. It was about her. It had always been about her. And it was about Mark, who had allowed her to do this. A sudden, unexpected calm descended upon me. The initial shock and pain gave way to a cold, hard resolve. I wouldn't be the humiliated bride left at the altar. I would not allow her to win, not again. Not this time. My internal struggle had reached its peak over the last few weeks, the creeping unease gnawing at my soul. Mark had become distant, his phone always in his hand, often face down. He'd make excuses for late nights, vague explanations about work emergencies. When I'd try to talk to him, he'd brush me off, saying I was stressed about the wedding. But I knew it was more than that. I felt it in my bones. One evening, about 10 days before the wedding, I was tidying up our apartment while Mark was supposedly at a late business meeting. He had left his phone on the kitchen counter, which was unlike him. Curiosity and a cold dread compelled me. I picked it up. It was locked. I tried his birth date, mine our anniversary. Nothing. My heart sank. Why was he hiding his phone from me? Then, as I placed it back down, a notification flashed across the screen from an unknown number. "Heard the wedding is still on. Don't worry, your plan is solid. We'll get him where it hurts." My blood ran cold. "Your plan is solid. We'll get him where it hurts." My first thought was Lily. My second thought was Mark. Was he planning something against me? Was this some cruel prank? My mind reeled. I tried to unlock the phone again, frantic now. No luck. I copied the number down on a piece of paper, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold the pen. Who was we? Who was him? And what plan? The next day, still reeling from the cryptic message, I decided I couldn't live in this state of terrified uncertainty. I had to know. I had to fight back. I had been underestimated and humiliated by Lily my entire life, but I was 28 years old now. I had built a successful career as a marketing manager, earning $90,000 a year, and I was financially independent. I wasn't the naive girl she could manipulate anymore. I confided in my best friend, Sarah, a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer who had seen through Lily's antics for years. "Amelia, I knew it," Sarah said, her voice grim. "I always knew that girl was trouble. You need proof, darling, undeniable proof." Sarah, my secret ally, had a contact, a private investigator she sometimes used for complex cases. His name was Mr. Jenkins, a gruff but efficient man who specialized in digital forensics. I hated the idea of spying on Mark, but the thought of marrying someone who was involved in some shadowy plan against me, or who was actively betraying me with my own sister, was unbearable. I handed Mr. Jenkins the mysterious phone number. "Find out who this belongs to and what they're planning," I told him, my voice trembling. "And please be discreet. This is my wedding, my future." I paid him an initial fee of $2,000, promising a bonus of $5,000 if he found anything conclusive before the wedding day, just 10 days away. The waiting was agonizing. Each passing day was a torture. I watched Mark like a hawk, trying to decipher his every move, every glance, every conversation. He still seemed distracted, often lost in thought, his attention frequently drawn to his phone. He would smile at me, kiss me goodnight, but there was a hollowness in his eyes, a distance in his touch. My heart ached, torn between wanting to trust him and the cold fear that he was deceiving me. Lily, meanwhile, was everywhere. She showed up at my dress fitting, claiming to make sure everything was perfect, but mostly just offering thinly veiled criticisms. "Oh, the lace on the sleeves is a little bulky, don't you think, sis? Makes your arms look a bit strong." She had offered to help with my makeup trial, suggesting a bold, dark lipstick that made me look gaunt, then quickly texting a photo to Mark with the caption, "Sis is trying a new look for the big day. What do you think?" Mark had replied with a laughing emoji. I felt a pang of humiliation. It felt like they were a team, conspiring against me. 2 days before the wedding, Mr. Jenkins called. His voice was grim. "Ms. Amelia, I have some information. The number belongs to a burner phone, but I traced its usage pattern. It's been in frequent communication with 2 other numbers. One of those is registered to Lily Hayes, your sister." My blood ran cold. "And the other number?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "That one's interesting," Mr. Jenkins continued. "It's a business line for a Mr. Victor Thorne." "Does that name mean anything to you, Victor Thorne?" The name hit me like a physical blow. Mark's sworn enemy. A ruthless, cutthroat businessman who had tried to sabotage Mark's software startup 2 years ago. Victor had tried to steal Mark's intellectual property, spread false rumors, and almost ruined him financially. Mark had barely escaped, losing $2 million in potential investments, but he had fought back and won, rebuilding his company from the ground up. He absolutely detested Victor. He often said, Victor Thorne would sell his own grandmother for a quick buck and probably laugh while doing it. Now, Lily was in communication with Victor Thorne, and the message on Mark's phone, "Your plan is solid, we'll get him where it hurts." It couldn't be about Mark. It had to be about me, or perhaps about us as a couple. "Mr. Jenkins," I said, my voice shaking with a new kind of fury, "I need to know everything. I need access to those conversations. Can you get them?" "It will be expensive and risky," he warned. "But yes, I can. It'll take 24 hours. You'll have it by tomorrow evening." "Do it," I said without hesitation. No matter the cost. I would pay $10,000, $20,000, whatever it took. My future, my dignity, was worth more than any amount of money. The next evening at 6:00 p.m., an encrypted email arrived from Mr. Jenkins. The file attached was a meticulously compiled report, call logs, text message transcripts, and even some recorded voice messages between Lily, Victor Thorne, and the burner phone. I opened it with trembling fingers, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. What I read chilled me to the bone. Lily's messages to Victor Thorne were horrifying. "He's falling for it. Mark is so dense. He thinks I'm just a silly little sister. The wedding is set for Sat. 23 January. Perfect timing for maximum impact. Your source in his company can leak the doctored financials right after the ceremony. Public humiliation, just like we discussed. He's going to look like such a fool. And Amelia, she'll be devastated. She always falls apart under pressure." There were even messages from the burner phone, which Mr. Jenkins had identified as belonging to a low-level associate of Victor Thorne, confirming details about the doctored financials. A plan to falsely accuse Mark of financial fraud in his company, timed to ruin his reputation and stock prices right after the wedding, causing a public scandal. Lily was not just trying to steal my groom. She was actively collaborating with Mark's enemy to destroy his career and reputation, all for her own twisted amusement and a promise of $50,000 from Victor Thorne. The white dress, the flirtations, the subtle sabotage, it was all part of a monstrous, elaborate scheme. And Mark, it seemed, was the primary target, with me as collateral damage, or perhaps even a means to get to him. I sat there staring at the screen, unable to move, unable to breathe. My sister, my own flesh and blood, planning to ruin my husband-to-be, to humiliate me, to shatter our entire world. A cold, hard certainty settled in my gut. I would not let her get away with this, not this time. My struggle, my quiet suffering was over. The turnaround had arrived. I immediately called Mark. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. "Amelia, is everything all right?" he asked, his voice sounding genuinely concerned. "Mark," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need you to come over. Now, it's urgent. It's about Lily and Victor Thorne." There was a long silence on the other end, then Mark's voice, cold and measured. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't touch anything." When he arrived, his face was pale, drawn. He walked straight to the computer, his eyes scanning the screen. As he read through the messages, a storm gathered in his eyes. His jaw tightened, his knuckles turning white as he clenched his fists. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. Finally, he looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of horror, anger, and a deep, profound sadness. "Amelia," he began, his voice barely a whisper, I knew something was wrong. Lily has been acting very strangely. I've been getting weird messages too, anonymous threats, veiled warnings about my upcoming downfall. And she's been pushing me to sign some new business contracts with some shady partners she found for me, saying it's a good investment for our future. I've been suspicious, but I never imagined this. Not her, not my own future sister-in-law. My heart swelled with a strange mix of relief and renewed pain. He wasn't falling for her, he was being targeted. And I, in my fear and paranoia, had doubted him. My guilt was immense. "I didn't know how to tell you, Amelia," he continued, his voice heavy. "I didn't want to worry you before the wedding. I was trying to discreetly investigate. I thought maybe Victor was trying to get to me through some old business contacts, but Lily, this is a whole new level of evil." Tears streamed down my face. "She's always been jealous, Mark," I choked out, "but I never thought she would go this far, to destroy your life, to humiliate me, on our wedding day." Mark pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly. "She won't," he vowed, his voice fierce. "She won't destroy anything, not our wedding, not our future, not our lives. We'll expose her, right there in front of everyone." A plan began to form, born out of shared anger and a renewed trust. We would let the wedding proceed. We would let Lily believe she was winning. And then, at the most dramatic moment, Mark would expose her. Not just for her flirty behavior, but for her full, malicious conspiracy. The public humiliation she sought to inflict on us would be turned back on her tenfold. The wedding day arrived, 23 January. The air was thick with tension, though only Mark and I knew the full weight of it. We had informed Father Michael and a select few trusted individuals, including Sarah and our parents, explaining the situation in hushed, tearful tones. My parents were devastated, heartbroken by Lily's betrayal, but also fiercely protective of me. They understood the need for decisive action. Sarah, with her lawyer's mind, helped us meticulously organize the evidence Mr. Jenkins had provided. The moment I saw Lily in her white dress, standing beside Mark, my earlier fear and hurt were replaced by a cold, steely determination. Every forced smile, every empty word exchanged, was a performance. My heart still ached, but beneath the pain there was a powerful resolve. This was my justice. As Father Michael concluded the exchange of vows, just before we were to exchange rings, Mark took a deep breath. His eyes met mine, a silent promise passing between us. My heart hammered, not with dread this time, but with a strange, exhilarating mix of anticipation and terror. Then, the moment that stopped time. Just as Lily, with her smug smile, reached for Mark's ring on the cushion, Mark moved. He didn't just take the ring from her, he stepped back, a single, decisive step that put a clear distance between himself and Lily. The entire church held its breath. Lily's hand, suspended in mid-air, looked ridiculous. Her smile vanished, replaced by a confused frown. Mark then did something completely unexpected. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out a small, sleek microphone. It was a professional-grade wireless mic, connected to the church's sound system. Kind used for eulogies or special announcements. A hushed murmur rippled through the congregation. What was happening? This wasn't part of the ceremony. Mark cleared his throat, the sound amplified throughout the sacred space. His gaze swept over the stunned faces of the guests, then landed squarely on Lily. His eyes were cold, hard, devoid of any warmth. "Friends, family," he began, his voice resonating with an unexpected power, "we are gathered here today to celebrate love, trust, and commitment. These are sacred vows meant to be honored." He paused, letting his words sink in. "However, before we proceed, there is a grave matter that needs to be addressed. A matter of profound betrayal, cunning manipulation, and a direct threat to everything Amelia and I hold dear." Lily's face, which had been a picture of confusion, now began to drain of color. Her eyes darted wildly, first to Mark, then to me, then to our parents, who were watching with stony faces. "For weeks," Mark continued, his voice gaining strength, "Amelia and I have been aware of certain schemes designed to undermine our happiness, to sabotage my career, and to publicly humiliate Amelia on what should be the happiest day of her life." A collective gasp filled the church. Whispers erupted, loud and frantic. My mother had her hand clamped over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. My father's jaw was set, his eyes fixed on Lily. "And it is with immense sadness, but also with a firm resolve for justice, that I must reveal the architect of these malicious plans." Mark's eyes locked onto Lily's, a burning intensity in their depths. "Lily Hayes, my fiancé's sister, our maid of honor." The entire church erupted in shocked cries. Lily let out a strangled cry, her hand flying to her mouth. "Mark, what are you saying? You're crazy," she shrieked, her carefully constructed composure cracking. Mark ignored her. He held up a small, slim tablet, the screen glowing faintly. "For months, Lily has been actively conspiring with a known business rival of mine, Mr. Victor Thorne. Their goal was not just to break up my relationship with Amelia, but to destroy my company, to ruin my reputation, and to cause immense financial and personal damage." He then began to read, his voice clear and unwavering, from the transcripts Mr. Jenkins had provided. He read Lily's messages to Victor Thorne, detailing the plans to leak doctored financial documents, to frame him for fraud, to time the scandal for maximum public impact. He read her cruel, gloating messages about Mark being dense and Amelia falling apart under pressure. Each word was a hammer blow, striking at Lily's carefully constructed image. Her face contorted, first with disbelief, then with a horrifying mixture of panic and rage. She started to babble, "No, no, he's lying. Amelia, tell him he's lying, this isn't true." She tried to appeal to our parents, but they just stared at her, their faces etched with disgust. "Lily also promised to introduce me to these shady investors she'd found for me," Mark continued, his voice rising, "knowing full well they were associates of Victor Thorne, intended to further compromise my company." He then scrolled to another section of the tablet. "And as for her motivation, beyond her clear jealousy and desire for attention, here is a message from Victor Thorne to Lily, confirming a payment. The $50,000 will be wired after the completion of the task, per our agreement." The silence that followed was deafening. The revelation of the monetary motivation, the sheer, cold-blooded premeditation, hung in the air like a noxious gas. Guests gasped, murmuring in outrage. My loyal friends, Sarah among them, looked at Lily with utter contempt. Lily crumpled. Her white dress, once a symbol of her wicked triumph, now seemed to engulf her, making her appear small and pathetic. She sank to her knees, her hands covering her face, her body shaking with what looked like sobs, but I knew were probably tears of pure fury at being caught. Mark's gaze softened slightly as he looked at me, a profound apology in his eyes. "Amelia, I am so sorry that you had to endure this. I was trying to find out the full extent of the conspiracy without alarming you, but your own strength and intuition led you to the truth first. Together, we have stopped this. Together, we will overcome it." He walked towards me, extending his hand. My legs felt like jelly, but I took a step towards him. His hand met mine, and his touch was solid, reassuring. The wedding ceremony had been stopped, derailed by this shocking confession. But something more important had begun, a true partnership built on honesty and a shared understanding of who we were up against. My parents rushed forward then, not to comfort Lily but to embrace me. My mother wept openly, stroking my hair. My father held me tight, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. We should have seen it. We should have protected you." Lily, still on the floor, let out a piercing shriek. "You're all against me, you always were." Amelia always gets everything. She always gets the attention, the love, the perfect life. She scrambled to her feet, her face a mask of distorted hatred, her eyes bloodshot. "You think you've won? You think this changes anything? He doesn't love you, Amelia. He just feels sorry for you. You're a pathetic, boring." Before she could finish, my father, his face purple with rage, stepped forward. "Enough, Lily," he roared, his voice shaking the entire church. "You have shamed this family beyond measure. Get out. Get out of this church and never darken our doorstep again." Lily stared at him, her mouth agape, utterly stunned. She had never, not once in her life, seen our father so angry, so utterly disgusted with her. The realization that she had finally pushed too far, that she had alienated her own parents, seemed to hit her with full force. She whimpered, a lost, broken sound. She cast one last venomous glance at me then, gathering her white dress around her, she ran, fleeing down the aisle, her echoing footsteps the only sound in the stunned silence. The church doors swung shut behind her, a final, definitive thud. The tension, which had been stretched to breaking point, slowly began to dissipate. The guests, though still reeling, now looked at me and Mark with understanding, with pity, and with admiration. Mark turned to me, his eyes full of love and regret. "Amelia," he said, his voice soft, "I know this wasn't the wedding you dreamed of. But will you still marry me, not just in front of these witnesses, but with a renewed promise of truth, trust, and unwavering support?" Tears streamed down my face, but these were tears of relief, of vindication, of a love that had been tested and had, against all odds, emerged stronger. "Yes, Mark," I choked out, a joyous sob escaping my lips. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Father Michael, his eyes moist, stepped forward. "Dearly beloved," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "let us now conclude this ceremony, with hearts full of love, forgiveness, and the promise of a truly blessed union." The rings were exchanged, this time with no interference, no hidden agendas, just the pure, unadulterated commitment of two people who had faced down betrayal and chosen each other. Mark slid the gold band onto my finger, his touch warm and secure. I placed his ring on his finger, my heart overflowing. The wedding march began again, this time sounding like a song of triumph, a melody of hope. We kissed, a deep, passionate kiss that sealed not just our vows, but our future, our resilience. After the ceremony, surrounded by our loving and supportive guests, we explained the full story in a more private setting at the reception. Mark's legal team immediately began the process of filing a police report against Victor Thorne and Lily Hayes for conspiracy to commit corporate fraud and blackmail. Lily, having fled the church, eventually faced legal consequences. Victor Thorne, a known criminal, was quickly apprehended. Lily, while not directly jailed for the conspiracy, faced charges for her involvement and was forced to perform extensive community service, pay a hefty fine, and was disowned by our family for her egregious actions. She lost everything she had worked so hard to pretend to be. Her social media, once a curated stream of perfection, became a barren wasteland. She vanished from our lives, a ghost of the destructive person she had been. Our wedding day, though dramatic, became a testament to our strength, our love, and our unwavering commitment to each other. It wasn't the quiet, fairy-tale wedding I had imagined, but it was real. It was honest. And it was ours. We spent 3 blissful weeks on our honeymoon in Italy, talking, reconnecting, and healing. Mark's company weathered the storm, emerging stronger, his investors more loyal than ever, impressed by his integrity and his swift action against the attempted sabotage. We learned that true love isn't just about the beautiful moments, but about facing the ugly ones together and emerging victorious. Our marriage began not with naive innocence, but with tested resilience. It was the best foundation we could have ever asked for. What would you have done if your own sister had tried to ruin your wedding and your groom's life like this? Would you have confronted her publicly, or would you have handled it privately? If you want to see and hear more emotional, shocking, twist, suspense, and revenge stories like this, please subscribe to Aunt Me's Fireside Story. Thank you so much for watching today's video with full attention. Until next time. The heavy, ornate door, a relic from a time when craftsmanship truly mattered, clicked shut with a definitive, almost mournful finality. It wasn't a slam, not even a sharp snap, but a soft, dull thud that resonated not just through the hushed entryway, but deep within my very bones. The sound, muffled by the thick velvet drapes that framed the tall, narrow windows, seemed to draw every last sliver of air from the room, leaving behind an oppressive vacuum where only moments before, accusations, confessions, and devastating truths had swirled like a suffocating storm. My fingers, still trembling slightly, subconsciously pressed against the cool, smooth surface of the polished mahogany armrest, seeking an anchor in the sudden, disorienting quiet. The silence that followed was not the peaceful, comforting kind that settles after a long day's work, nor the gentle hush of a sleeping house. No, this was a living, breathing silence, thick and viscous, pressing in from all sides, a palpable entity in itself. It was the silence of a battlefield after the last cannon has fired, the lingering smoke still stinging the eyes, the metallic tang of fear and spent anger still clinging stubbornly to the air. Every single tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, usually a rhythmic, unnoticed comfort, now echoed with a startlingly loud, deliberate cadence, each beat a stark reminder of the irrevocably altered passage of time. I could hear the faint, distant hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen, a low, mechanical drone that normally blended into the background, but now it seemed to amplify the profound stillness, making every other non-sound more acutely felt. The house, usually bustling with the ghosts of countless conversations and decades of laughter, now felt cavernous and empty, its very walls seemingly absorbing the shock that still vibrated through my own weary frame. The dust motes, caught in the late afternoon sunbeams that slanted through the lace curtains, danced their slow, eternal ballet, indifferent to the seismic shift that had just occurred within these very chambers. The air, heavy with the faint, lingering scent of old books and dried potpourri, was now overlaid with the sharp, almost acrid smell of burnt ambition and shattered illusions, a phantom odor only I seemed to perceive. Even the gentle rustle of leaves outside the window, usually a soothing lullaby, seemed unnaturally muted, as if the very world outside had chosen to hold its breath in deference to the immense emotional weight that had just dropped like an anvil in this quiet living room. It was a silence that screamed, a silence that bore witness, a silence that would forever mark this exact 4:17 p.m. on the 23rd of October, 1998, as the precise moment everything irrevocably changed. My gaze, unfocused and distant, drifted to the empty spot on the antique rug where he had stood just moments ago. The faint impression his polished shoe had left in the plush fibers was already beginning to spring back, a small, cruel metaphor for the way life stubbornly, relentlessly moves on, even when your own world feels like it has come to a screeching, irreparable halt. My own heart, a drum against my ribs, hammered out a frantic, irregular rhythm, a desperate Morse code of shock and lingering disbelief. My palms were slick, despite the cool temperature of the room, and a cold tremor ran down my spine, not from fear, but from the sheer, overwhelming magnitude of what had just been unveiled. The carefully constructed facade, the years of placid smiles and shared holidays, the intricate tapestry of a life woven with threads of deceit, had finally, dramatically, unraveled. And I, the quiet weaver, had been the one to pull the final, devastating thread. The revenge, meticulously planned over 7 long years, had come to its bitter, necessary fruition. It wasn't the fiery, explosive retribution often glorified in cinema, nor was it a public spectacle designed for humiliation. No, my revenge was far more insidious, far more deeply personal, a surgical strike aimed directly at the heart of his carefully guarded deception. It was the quiet, undeniable truth, laid bare with irrefutable proof, delivered in a calm, unwavering voice that had stripped him of every defense, every excuse, every shred of his carefully cultivated respectability. I hadn't raised my voice once. I hadn't even needed to. The documents, spread out on the coffee table like damning evidence in a courtroom, had spoken volumes. The 2 bank statements, the 3 forged signatures, the one meticulously kept ledger detailing every dollar and cent of the stolen inheritance, an inheritance meant for my children, for our children. It was all there, undeniable, damning. I closed my eyes, a wave of exhaustion washing over me so profound it felt like a physical blow. The last 2 hours had been an emotional marathon, a grueling ascent to a precipice from which there was no turning back. I could still see his face, contorted in a mask of shock, then disbelief, then finally, a terrifying, raw despair. His eyes, usually so calculating and self-assured, had darted from my unwavering gaze to the irrefutable evidence, then back to me, searching for a flicker of doubt, a sign of weakness, a crumb of mercy. He found none. There was a moment, just a fleeting 2 seconds, when I thought I saw a genuine flicker of remorse, a shadow of the man I had once believed him to be, the man I had loved for 17 years. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a cold, desperate rage. He had tried to argue, to deny, to deflect, his voice rising in strained protest, but each word had simply bounced off the impenetrable shield of truth I had erected. My voice, though soft, had carried the weight of 7 years of quiet suffering, 7 years of meticulous investigation, 7 years of a love slowly curdling into a potent blend of sorrow and resolve. The money, I had said, my voice barely above a whisper, was for them, for their future, for the education you promised them. My gaze had swept over the photographs on the mantelpiece, smiling faces of 3 beautiful children, oblivious to the betrayal that had shadowed their young lives. His own children. Our children, the irony was a bitter pill. He had stolen from his own flesh and blood, from the very legacy he was supposed to protect. The total sum, $2.5 million, carefully siphoned away over a period of 5 years, starting just 1 year after my dear departed parents had left it to our family. It was all gone, dissipated into his clandestine investments and lavish, secret lifestyle. He had tried to reach for my hand then, a desperate, final plea for the familiar intimacy that had once bound us. But I had instinctively recoiled, a movement so swift and visceral it had startled even myself. The touch of his skin, once a source of comfort, now felt like poison. The illusion was shattered beyond repair. There was no going back to the naive, trusting woman I had been 7 years ago, the woman who had slowly begun to notice the subtle discrepancies, the evasive answers, the growing chill in his once warm demeanor. The path to this moment had been long and tortuous, paved with countless sleepless nights and an unwavering determination born of a mother's fierce protective instinct. The full weight of the scene now settled upon me, a suffocating blanket. My head began to throb with a dull ache, mirroring the persistent dull ache in my chest that had become a constant companion these past years. I reached for the delicate teacup on the side table, its porcelain still warm from the chamomile tea I hadn't touched. My hand shook, sending tiny ripples across the surface of the amber liquid. I stared into the swirling pattern, seeing not the reflections of the room, but the swirling chaos of my own mind. A quiet sigh, almost imperceptible, escaped my lips. It was a sigh that carried the exhaustion of a battle won, but also the profound sorrow of a peace irrevocably lost. I remembered the very first time I suspected. It was a cold 17 December, 1991, just 6 months after my parents' passing. My father, bless his kind soul, had always been meticulously organized, and had left me a detailed ledger of all his financial affairs, including the trust fund established for the children. I had always trusted my husband completely with all our finances. He had a head for numbers, or so I believed. But something had pricked at my subconscious when he'd suddenly insisted on taking over full control of the inheritance, suggesting my emotional state might make me vulnerable. I'd brushed it off then, attributing it to his loving concern. How wrong I had been. It was during a casual conversation with a dear friend, a retired accountant, that a seed of doubt had truly been planted. She had spoken of common red flags, of subtle shifts in behavior when financial infidelity was at play. A gut feeling, a prickling sensation, had started to grow, slowly, insidiously. Over the next 2 years I had observed, quietly, patiently, his increasingly frequent business trips that lasted for 3 or 4 days. The new, expensive gadgets he'd bring home, always with a vague explanation of client gifts or business perks. The way he'd flinch if I ever glanced at his phone, or his briefcase, or the stack of mail by the front door. The subtle distancing, the emotional chasm that widened daily. It wasn't about the money, not entirely. It was about the betrayal, the insidious erosion of trust, the knowledge that the man I had vowed to share my life with was living a secret existence, built on a foundation of lies and theft from our own family. My investigation had started small, almost imperceptibly. A forgotten bank statement here, a crumpled receipt there, carefully retrieved from the waste bin after he'd left for work. Each piece of the puzzle, seemingly insignificant on its own, had slowly begun to form a horrifying picture. I'd spent countless hours in the quiet solitude of our study after everyone else had gone to bed, poring over documents, cross-referencing dates, meticulously reconstructing the timeline of his deception. I learned about shell corporations, about offshore accounts, about the convoluted labyrinth he had constructed to hide his tracks. I even discreetly hired a private investigator for 6 months, a kind, discreet woman named Clara who specialized in financial fraud. Clara confirmed my worst fears and provided the irrefutable evidence I needed. The cost was significant, nearly $30,000, but it was a small price to pay for the truth and for the chance to protect my children's future. The journey had not been without its moments of crushing despair. There were countless nights when I had simply sat at the kitchen table, the cold, stark light of the 2:00 a.m. moon spilling through the window, tears streaming silently down my face. The weight of the secret, the burden of knowledge, had felt unbearable. I had felt utterly alone, trapped in a gilded cage of deceit. The temptation to confront him impulsively, to scream out the truth, had been immense, almost overwhelming. But I had resisted. I knew I needed to be stronger, smarter, more strategic. For the children. Their innocence, their bright, unsuspecting smiles had been my constant North Star, guiding me through the darkest passages of this quiet war. I couldn't let his greed destroy their future, their sense of security. Now, as the last echoes of his departure faded into the oppressive quiet, a strange, hollow victory settled in my heart. The sense of justice was undeniably there, a deep, resonant hum beneath the surface of my weariness. But it was entwined with a profound, aching sadness. The man I had loved, the life I had envisioned, was gone. Not gradually, but with a swift, brutal cleave, leaving behind a gaping wound that would take years, perhaps a lifetime, to heal. The revenge hadn't felt triumphant. Felt heavy, necessary, but heavy. I slowly pushed myself up from the armchair, my muscles protesting with a dull stiffness. My reflection in the polished surface of the antique mirror above the fireplace showed a woman who looked far older than her 42 years. Fine lines etched around my eyes, a shadow of weariness beneath them, a slight tremor in my lips. But in the depths of my eyes, there was also a quiet strength, a resolute fire that had burned through the deception and emerged, scarred but unbroken. This was the woman who had fought for her children, for justice, for a future untainted by lies. My gaze fell upon the framed photograph on the mantelpiece, a picture taken 10 years ago on our 7th wedding anniversary. We stood arm in arm, smiling broadly, our children, then aged 5, 3, and 1, clutching our hands. A picture of perfect happiness. A picture of a lie. A bitter, sardonic smile touched my lips, quickly fading. The innocence of that moment, the genuine joy, felt impossibly distant now, like a dream from another lifetime. How skillfully he had played the part, how convincingly he had maintained the illusion. It was a testament to his cunning, but also a stark reminder of my own naivete. I walked over to the large bay window, pulling back the heavy velvet curtains slightly. The evening sky was beginning to deepen, streaks of lavender and rose painting the western horizon. A few early stars had already begun to prick through the fading light, tiny pinpricks of hope in the vast expanse. Below, on the quiet suburban street, I saw a familiar car pull away, its taillights glowing red as it turned the corner and disappeared from view. He was gone. Out of my life. Out of our children's lives, at least for now, until the legal proceedings began. The weight of the future pressed in, daunting and unknown, yet also undeniably free. The legal battle ahead would be arduous, no doubt. Lawyers, courtrooms, financial disclosures, the painful unraveling of a shared life. I had already consulted with a formidable attorney, a sharp woman named Ms. Henderson, who assured me we had a very strong case. The first meeting was scheduled for 9:00 a.m. on 29 October, 1998, and I had already compiled 3 large binders filled with every piece of evidence. It would be draining, emotionally and financially, but I was prepared. I had saved enough to cover the initial legal fees, nearly $75,000, money I had squirreled away from my modest income as a freelance writer over the past 4 years, piece by piece, dollar by dollar. Every word I had typed, every article I had published, had been a small act of defiance, a quiet contribution to my children's future, a silent preparation for this very reckoning. I turned away from the window, my eyes scanning the room as if seeing it for the first time. This house, our home for 15 years, held countless memories, both cherished and now tainted. The children's height marks etched into the doorframe in the kitchen, the worn spot on the rug where we'd played board games, the familiar scent of wood polish and old books. It was a haven, but it also bore the invisible scars of betrayal. Would it ever feel truly mine again? Would it ever feel truly peaceful? I hoped so. I knew it would take time, patience, and the unwavering love of my children. My gaze lingered on a small, hand-stitched sampler hanging on the wall, a gift from my grandmother. Home is where the heart is. A poignant reminder. My heart was shattered, yes, but it was still beating, still pulsing with love for my 3 children, who were now the true center of my universe. I would rebuild. We would rebuild. We would forge a new home, perhaps not within these same walls, but wherever our hearts found genuine peace and security. The children, bless their innocent hearts, were currently at my sister's house, a sleepover carefully orchestrated to spare them the raw intensity of today's confrontation. I would pick them up tomorrow morning, 24 October 1998 at 10:00 a.m., and sit them down, explaining what I could in terms they could understand. That their father had made some very serious mistakes, and that our family would be changing. It would be one of the hardest conversations of my life, but it was a necessary one. I walked into the kitchen, the scent of the evening meal I had prepared earlier, a comforting chicken stew, still lingering in the air. I had cooked mindlessly, mechanically, the familiar ritual a small anchor in the storm of my emotions. Now, the thought of eating felt foreign, impossible. I poured myself a glass of water, the cold liquid a sharp contrast to the dryness in my throat. I leaned against the counter, the cool tile pressing against my back, and let out another long, shuddering breath. The air, though still heavy with residual tension, felt a fraction lighter. The absolute silence of the house, once so suffocating, now felt less like a prison and more like an empty canvas, waiting to be filled with new sounds, new memories, new life. The twist had been devastating, yes, but the revenge, though painful, had cleared a path. It had ripped away the bandage, revealing the festering wound beneath, but it had also initiated the long, arduous process of healing. I wasn't naive enough to believe it would be easy. There would be anger, sorrow, confusion, and fear for the children. But there would also be honesty, integrity, and the chance to build a life free from the suffocating weight of lies. This was the first step on a very long road. A faint shiver ran through me, despite the warmth of the kitchen. I realized I was still wearing the same sensible woolen dress I had put on this morning, nearly 14 hours ago. It felt heavy, restrictive, almost like armor I no longer needed. I needed to shed it, to shed the day, to shed the weight of what had transpired. I slowly walked towards the staircase, each step a deliberate act. The house seemed to watch me, its shadows long and deep in the fading light. But I was no longer afraid of the shadows. I had walked through the darkest ones, and I had emerged on the other side. As I ascended the creaking wooden stairs, my hand gliding over the smooth, worn banister, I thought of my parents. They had taught me about integrity, about standing up for what was right, about the enduring power of love. They would have been heartbroken by his betrayal, but they would have been proud of my strength, my resolve to protect their grandchildren. Their memory, a warm, guiding light, settled gently in my heart. The soft glow of the nightlight from the children's room, left on by habit, cast a gentle, amber pool of light on the landing. I paused, looking into the quiet room. 3 empty beds, 3 stuffed animals still nestled on pillows, 3 small, bright futures awaiting. A tear, hot and heavy, finally tracked its way down my cheek, a single, solitary release. It wasn't a tear of despair, but a tear of exhaustion, of sorrow, and of a quiet, fierce determination. I went into my own bedroom, the curtains already drawn against the encroaching night. The room was cool and dim, a sanctuary. I walked over to my bedside table, picked up the well-worn copy of my favorite novel, and placed it down. My gaze fell upon the small, silver-framed photograph tucked beneath it, a picture of my parents, smiling, their arms linked. My father with his kind eyes and my mother with her gentle, knowing smile. They had faced their own challenges, their own heartaches, but they had always done so with grace and courage. They were my inspiration. I would sleep tonight, perhaps fitfully, but I would sleep. And tomorrow, a new day would dawn, bringing with it the daunting tasks of rebuilding, of healing, of moving forward. But it would also bring a profound sense of peace, the peace that comes from truth, from justice, from knowing that I had done everything in my power to protect those I loved most. The revenge wasn't a celebration, it was an exorcism, a necessary cleansing. And now, the true work, the work of living and loving and healing, could finally begin. It's in these quiet, reflective moments, dear friends, when the dust settles and the raw edges of pain begin to soften, that we truly find our strength. It's in the aftermath of life's most challenging storms that we discover the resilience woven into the very fabric of our being. And it's in the unwavering commitment to truth and the fierce, protective love for our families that we find the courage to face whatever comes next. Thank you for allowing me to share this deeply personal, deeply challenging chapter of a story filled with emotion, shocking revelations, unforeseen twists, nail-biting suspense, and a resolution that, while bittersweet, ultimately brought a quiet form of justice. If this tale has resonated with you, if it has touched your heart or sparked a flicker of understanding, please consider giving this video a like. And if you wish to join our growing family, to hear more stories of life's complex tapestry, woven with threads of hardship, triumph, and the enduring human spirit, then please subscribe to Aunt Me's Fireside Story. Your support means the world to me, and it allows me to continue sharing these intimate narratives with full attention and care. Until we gather again by the flickering glow of the screen, remember that even in the deepest silence, there is often the greatest truth. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being here today. And as I sit here, the warmth of this virtual fireside still embracing me, I find my thoughts drifting, swirling like the faint smoke that might rise from actual embers. The tale of Evelyn, the haunting shadows of those long 20 years, the intricate dance of fate and consequence, it doesn't simply vanish when the final words are spoken, does it? No, it lingers. It settles in the quiet corners of the mind, a persistent echo that refuses to be entirely silenced. Here, in this gentle afterglow, the air itself feels different. The subtle hum of the room, usually a background whisper, now seems imbued with the weight of all those emotions, those moments of stark terror and fragile hope. The soft glow from my lamp casts elongated shadows, making familiar objects appear to hold secrets, to bear witness to the narrative I've just unfurled. There's a peculiar stillness that descends, not a void, but a rich, layered quietude, thick with unspoken thoughts and the ghost of shared experience. It's the kind of silence that follows a powerful piece of music where the notes have ceased, but their resonance vibrates deep within your bones, shaping the very air you breathe. It's a silence filled not with emptiness, but with the profound presence of what has just been. A palpable presence, almost a character in itself, observing, reflecting, gently prodding at the edges of consciousness. You can almost feel the collective sigh of thousands, released into this shared, contemplative space, a testament to the universal threads that connect us all through stories of struggle and perseverance. This quiet moment is a sanctuary, allowing the often turbulent waves of narrative to gently recede, leaving behind the smooth, polished stones of insight and empathy on the shore of our collective understanding. It's a precious, fleeting interval where the heart can truly absorb, where the lessons, however bitter or sweet, can truly take root, unfettered by the onward rush of daily life. The concept of justice, for instance, is something I find myself revisiting, turning it over and over in my mind like a smooth river stone. We often envision justice as a towering, majestic edifice, perfectly balanced, unequivocally clear. But Evelyn's story reminds us that it is often far more nuanced, more fragile, a quiet, tenacious bloom pushing through cracked pavement. For her, it wasn't the thunderous roar of a public conviction or the absolute retribution that one might crave in the heat of anger. It was something deeper, something intrinsically tied to the quiet reclamation of her own narrative, the public validation of her suffering, and the eventual, if belated, acknowledgement of the truth. That quiet form of justice was, in its essence, the lifting of a profound internal burden, a weight she had carried across 2 decades, through countless sunrises and sunsets, through the mundane rhythms of daily life that perpetually masked a screaming void within. Imagine carrying a secret, a profound trauma, for 20 years. 20 years where every smile felt a little forced, every laugh a little hollow, every moment of peace constantly threatened by the cold whisper of what lay buried. It's like living with a phantom limb. The pain is undeniably real, an insistent throb beneath the surface, yet invisible to the world. For Evelyn, the revelation, the bringing to light of what had been hidden, was akin to a surgeon finally addressing the source of that phantom pain, even if the scar remained. The initial incision of truth might have been agonizingly sharp, a searing reminder of the past, but it was also the first step towards true healing. The truth, in all its bitter glory, had finally been exhumed, its sharp edges glinting under the harsh light of scrutiny, offering not comfort but clarity. The passage of 20 years, 7,300 days and nights, is not merely a span of time. It is an erosion, a transformation. It shapes the contours of a person's soul, subtly altering their perspective, hardening some edges while perhaps softening others. For Evelyn, those 2 decades were a crucible. They forged within her a resilience that was both breathtaking and heartbreaking. To fight, to hope, to simply endure for so long requires an inner furnace that few possess. I often wonder what sustained her during the darkest hours, what flicker of light she clung to when the world around her seemed to conspire against her voice. Was it the memory of a cherished bond, a deep-seated sense of personal rectitude, or perhaps simply the stubborn, elemental refusal to let darkness win? It was likely a complex tapestry of all these, woven together with the fine, strong threads of pure, unadulterated grit. And closure. Ah, that elusive butterfly we all chase in the wake of tragedy. Evelyn's journey taught me that true closure is rarely a definitive end, a neatly tied bow. Instead, it is more often a gradual acceptance, a slow, gentle turning away from the constant reopening of the wound, towards a space where the scar tissue can finally settle and strengthen. It is the ability to look back without the immediate, visceral jolt of pain, to recall the past not with sharp agony, but with a mournful, yet steady, understanding. It's not forgetting, never forgetting, but rather integrating the past into the present, allowing the vibrant colors of life to slowly seep back into the muted tones of trauma. The quiet form of justice she received didn't erase the past. It simply allowed her to finally acknowledge it, to name it, and to begin the arduous, deeply personal process of living beyond its immediate shadow. It was the moment she could breathe a little deeper, her lungs finally expanding to their full capacity, even if the air still carried a faint, nostalgic scent of sorrow. The ripple effect of such an act, the initial cruel stone thrown into the still waters of Evelyn's life, spread its cold, dark tendrils far beyond her immediate experience. It touched her family, casting a long, uneasy shadow over their gatherings, tainting their shared memories. It undoubtedly affected her relationships, making trust a fragile, precious commodity, hard-won and easily shattered. It painted her world in shades of muted suspicion, making her inherently question the intentions behind friendly smiles and kind gestures. This is the insidious nature of unresolved trauma. It doesn't stay confined to its origin point. It seeps into the very fabric of existence, staining everything it touches with its disquieting presence. It's like a persistent, cold draft in a warm room, a constant reminder that not all is as it should be, leaving an unshakable chill deep in one's bones. The effort required to push against this constant chilling influence, to seek warmth and light, is monumental, a testament to the unyielding spirit of those who endure. Her story is a powerful testament to the enduring human spirit, yes, but also a stark reminder of the fragile balance we inhabit. It underscores the profound importance of vigilance, of listening, truly listening, to the whispers that might otherwise be dismissed as mere conjecture or distant echoes. Had someone listened earlier, had the complexities been untangled with more immediate care, perhaps some of those 20 years of suffering could have been alleviated or even entirely avoided. It's a sobering thought, a heavy realization that hangs in the air, asking us to be more attentive, more empathetic, more courageous in seeking out the truth, even when it is uncomfortable or inconvenient. This profound tale, with its shocking revelations and unforeseen twists, also shone a light on the intricate machinery of societal responses. How institutions can fail, how fear can silence, and how the pursuit of one's own truth can become a solitary, arduous pilgrimage. The nail-biting suspense wasn't just in the what-ifs of Evelyn's pursuit, but in the internal battle she fought daily, the conflict between the desire for peace and the unyielding demand for justice. It was a tightrope walk over a canyon of despair, with every step uncertain, every gust of doubt threatening to unbalance her. Her determination was a beacon, a steady flame against a gathering storm, guiding her through the swirling mists of legal challenges and the dense thickets of emotional exhaustion. And I, sitting here sharing these stories, feel the weight of them long after the camera stops rolling. Each narrative I weave, each life I touch upon, leaves an indelible mark upon my own spirit. Evelyn's story, in particular, resonated with a profound depth, reminding me of the sheer, unyielding power of a single individual's will to survive, to overcome, to finally reclaim what was stolen. It reaffirmed my belief in the inherent dignity of every human being and the universal right to live free from the oppressive shadow of past wrongs. I carry her courage within me now, a quiet strength that whispers in moments of my own doubt, urging me to be equally resolute, equally unwavering in my commitment to empathy and understanding. The bittersweet resolution of her story is perhaps the most poignant lesson of all. It reminds us that justice, when it finally arrives, does not magically erase the scars. It does not rewind the clock to a time before the wound. Instead, it offers a form of healing that is deeply rooted in acceptance of what was, what is, and what can never be changed. The sweetness comes from the triumph of truth, the peace of knowing, and the quiet satisfaction of a battle fought and won. The bitterness, however, lingers in the lost years, the unlived moments, the innocent joy that was tragically curtailed. It's a flavor that stays on the tongue, a reminder of the permanent cost of human cruelty, a subtle ache in the heart that serves as a perpetual sentinel against complacency. It's the kind of flavor that makes you savor the present moment all the more, for its fleeting sweetness, even with that lingering trace of what could have been. This sharing, this act of vulnerability on my part and deep listening on yours, creates a sacred space. A space where we can collectively bear witness to the complexities of life, where we can find solace in shared experience, and where the threads of individual stories weave into the rich, intricate tapestry of our collective humanity. It's a tapestry that is sometimes dark and frayed, other times bright and vibrant, but always, always profoundly meaningful. My hope, my deepest wish, is that these stories don't just entertain, but that they awaken something within each of you. A deeper sense of compassion, a renewed commitment to justice in your own spheres, and a profound appreciation for the resilience of the human heart. When I first started this journey with Aunt Me's fireside stories, I envisioned a quiet corner where narratives could unfold, where voices could be heard, and where the often unseen struggles of everyday people could find a platform. I didn't fully anticipate the depth of connection, the rich exchange of empathy, and the sheer power that comes from truly sharing our human condition, stripped bare of pretense and artifice. Each story, like Evelyn's, becomes a small flame, adding to the collective warmth and light of our shared virtual fireside. It illuminates not just the past, but offers guidance for navigating the present and shaping a more compassionate future. It's in these reflective moments, after the intensity of the main narrative has subsided, that the true lessons often emerge, like constellations slowly becoming visible in the deepening twilight. The initial shock gives way to contemplation, the raw emotion to a quieter understanding. And it is here, in this peaceful introspection, that we are truly able to absorb the profound wisdom embedded within each experience, each journey, each hard-won battle. The story doesn't end when I utter the final sentence. It begins anew within each of you, blossoming into personal insights, fresh perspectives, and a deeper appreciation for the intricate dance of light and shadow that defines our existence. It continues to unfold, not on the screen, but in the quiet chambers of your own hearts, guiding your steps, informing your choices, and perhaps softening the edges of your own understanding of the world. And so, as the virtual embers truly begin to fade, leaving only a gentle warmth in the air, I hope the resonance of Evelyn's story, and indeed all the stories shared here, continues to echo within you. May it serve as a quiet reminder of the power of truth, the necessity of endurance, and the enduring strength of the human spirit to seek and find a quiet form of justice, however long it may take, however bittersweet its taste. Thank you for lingering with me in this reflective space, for allowing these deeper thoughts to be shared. It means more than words can express to know that these tales find a home within your listening hearts. Until our paths cross again, may your days be filled with quiet strength and moments of profound understanding. And with that, my dear friends, our time by the hearth for this evening gently draws to a close. I always find these moments of shared storytelling to be precious, a balm for the soul, and I cherish each one, knowing that across distances, we've connected over a shared whisper of humanity. It's in these quiet reflections that we often find the deepest truths, don't you agree? Each narrative, whether it's a grand saga or a simple recollection, holds a piece of universal wisdom, waiting to be discovered. I hope that Evelyn's journey, even as it fades from our immediate focus, leaves behind a lasting impression, a gentle nudge towards empathy and resilience in your own lives. If this story, or any of the tales we've shared, resonated deeply within your heart, I truly hope you'll consider letting me know in the comments below. Your thoughts, your feelings, your own reflections on what these stories mean to you, they truly mean the world to me. It's through your engagement that this fireside circle truly grows, reaching more people who might also find solace and strength in these narratives. Please, if you haven't already, do consider giving this video a gentle like and subscribing to Aunt Me's Fireside Stories. Your support helps keep this old storyteller's fire burning bright, allowing me to continue sharing these journeys with all of you, week after week. It ensures that there's always a warm seat waiting for you, right here by the hearth, whenever you need a moment of peace and reflection. Until next time, dear ones, remember to listen to the whispers of your own heart, for they hold stories worth telling. Thank you for being here always.